Welcome back, everybody. Thank you guys for tuning in. I hope you're having good luck with your gardening and all of your projects. And now, without further ado, let's get to today's video. It's more of an explanation video, and you guys can thank Mr. David Christensen, also known as JCDC in the AZ. He wanted to know if the sump tank or the fish tank could be drained by mistake if there was not an equal flow of water. So we'll start at the sump tank. So the sump tank does not have a pump in it, or not the sump tank, sorry, the fish tank. The fish tank does not have a pump inside of it. There's no pump in here. And there's a piece of pipe at the bottom that I need. So the sump tank pumps water into the fish tank, and in the center of the fish tank is what I call a solid lifting overflow pipe. So it's a 1.5 inch piece of PVC that goes down to the very bottom in the center, and that has a 4-inch bell on it. And what that does is, as water is being pumped in, all of the solids from the fish will flow to the center and they'll be pushed up this pipe, and then the pipe will let the water escape using gravity. So if I cut this off right now, I just took a Sawzall and I cut this pipe off of here, none of the water inside the fish tank will drain out. I mean, we might lose a 1/2 inch of water, but it's not going to siphon out all the water. You know, if I cut the pipe off down here in the bottom, it will also not siphon out the water. And the sump tank has a pump in it that pumps water to all of the buckets, and then the excess pressure is used to put water back into the fish tank. So it just keeps recycling the water. So the fish poo and the ammonia laced water from the fish would be drained through the solid lifting overflow and fall into the sump tank, which mixes with oxygen. And I guess the only way for the sump tank to be drained out is if one of our cats gets up here and they play with one of these lines and it goes out like that. And we have a volunteer down there to get sprayed with water. There's not really a chance of anything breaking. The pipes are not under pressure. They're not under a tremendous pressure. We're using an aquarium pump, so it's not high pressure, because otherwise these things would be spraying out, you know, across the yard, but they're not. And the water that falls down into these falls down to the drain, and we have one over here that you can see through, so you can kind of see it as an example. So the water level is right there, and that is where this elbow is. So the water falls in here and drains out, and then it falls down using gravity, similar to the fish tank, except these have drains at the bottom and the fish tank has its drain at the top. So these can be drained all the way out except for about 1 inch at the bottom, which will give the roots enough water to survive if I stopped paying my power bill and the sun went out. But since we don't have a power bill and we can't burn out the sun, and we're not going to live for millions and millions of billions of years for the sun to burn out or expand and burn out or whatever it's going to do, we're going to be fine. Let me explain something else too, and how the buckets get their water. We have a 1/2 inch PVC line, and each PVC line has a top hat grommet. I'll go show you what those look like, not painted and not installed. Now these are 1/4 inch inner diameter, so that's what they look like. Come on, focus camera. So there's our top hat grommet. So that goes inside the 1/2 inch line there, or 3/4 inch, sorry, this is a 3/4 inch PVC line. And I just drilled those out with a stepper bit. But each one has one. Each feed line has one of those top hats. And then we have our 1/4 inch drip line coming out of that. And these can be adjusted individually by pressing them in so that the opening on the inside presses against the back wall. And then we also have a valve that can control the flow of that as well. Before I had the 1.5 inch drains, we had 1/2 inch drains, and that wasn't enough to drain the water out of all these buckets, and then they would start to overflow. But since we increased that, and then they still fall out by gravity, I don't have this sealed around this edge. If I were to seal all of these shut, it would probably pull the water out even faster, depending on how long the drain line is in the sump tank. So the longer the drain line is in your sump tank, the greater pull you can have on the water. So we have a 1.5 inch line with a reducer that goes down to 1 inch, and that just gives us a nice gravitational pull. So just the gravity from the earth is pulling that water down, and it wants to equalize inside the sump tank. And that same goes for the fish tank, because there's its drain. See, it's not under pressure. And if I were to reduce the diameter of that pipe as the water flows down, so 1.5 inch, and then we switch to 1 inch, and then we go to 1/2 inch, the water would be under pressure down here, and it would cause it to, the system would burp and suck a bunch of air in, and you might have issues with that. Same with these drains. So we just leave them open to the atmosphere, and the water level inside the pipe only wants to be as high as the bottom of the drain pipe here. So if we were to measure the water level in here, it would be exactly the same inside this pipe and exactly the same in that pipe, because water makes a great level. You can actually use clear pipes and use colored water to make a level, and level almost anything that way, because water wants to be level. So let's see, what else could I explain? The inside of the bucket looks just like this. So there's another 90-degree elbow on the inside of the bucket that sits about 1/2 inch or more above the bottom of the bucket. So when the system is turned off, if I turn it off right now, there's still a little bit of water in here, and if the plants are mature enough, their roots will be able to reach that water. And you know, if we had, like, say the pump broke and I couldn't get a new one for a week, that would be no big deal. The plants would still survive. And you can also manually water these too. You could just get a cup out of the sump tank and then dump a cup of water in each one of these every day, and it would probably be enough moisture to keep the plants going. And as you can see, this one right here is dangerously close to just whoop, going out like that. So some of these need to be addressed. When you buy this 1/4 inch pipe, it has a memory in it because it's wrapped up in a coil. So here's the coil. This is a kind of a denser pipe. It's probably like an ABS or something like that. They make one that's like a rubber and it's softer. That works a lot better, but they just didn't have any when I went to the store. So I guess, let's see, some of these are, yeah, like that one. That one's soft, pliable. You can put it wherever you want to. It's not curved. It doesn't want to jump out. But I think I paid $10 for a 100-foot roll of this stiffer ABS pipe, and it works. You just have to fuss with it a little bit. You can actually just put a stone on top of that, and in fact I did that with this bucket here. So maybe I'll just stick one on there real quick so I don't have to think about that later. So there we go, put a stone on that, and now that pipe cannot curve and jump out. You know, maybe the heat, the sun will cause the tubes to move around and change shape. There's another one right here that's bending. So we'll just stick a stone on there. And they do make drip emitter ends for these you can put on too, but I'm trying to do this cheap so that if you viewers want to build something yourself, it's not, you know, you don't have to go to the hydroponics website and spend $100 for a Beto bucket or whatever they call them, and then some custom made one-off emitters. But that's how that's going to work. And then as far as the cage goes, that's going to be for trellising plants. Like I said in the last video, we're mainly going to be doing that with grapes and then maybe some fruits in the summertime. And we'll be moving these grape plants around. Perhaps one on every corner, maybe more. I think we got these for like $9 or $10 at Ace Hardware. And well, there you go. I hope that it addresses some of your thoughts for some of you folks that have a little bit more of a engineering type mind and you have questions about that. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a math expert. I'm just a goofball that lives off grid out in the middle of nowhere that likes to build stuff that's different from everything else. And I did not invent this technology. Any lake or river around the world has been doing this since God made the earth and everything on it, or whatever you want to believe. So there, yeah, there's a brief explanation. Thank you, David, for the question. I hope that explains a little bit more for you. I don't have all the stats for the gallons per minute or anything like that on this, if you want to get technical. I just know it works. I set it up, I adjust the valves until everything works the way it's supposed to, and then we go from there. We still do have a few grommets. Oh, and then the grommets that I'm using, speaking of grommets, let's see if I got one laying around. Yeah, there we go. There we go. So those are the grommets that I'm using in the buckets. So they have a little gap there all the way around. So the thickness of the bucket fits inside that gap, creating mostly a waterproof seal. Some of the holes may be a little bit bigger. If you're using a hole saw, you'll get more consistent results, but we're using a stepper bit. And I can show you as an example, this bucket in particular, I drilled the hole too big, and the grommet fits all the way into the hole rather than fitting in there tightly with the thickness of the bucket wall fitting into that gap. You can probably see that in an example here, if I can do this while recording a video. But there's the gap, and then there's the bucket wall, fits right into that gap. And then when you put your PVC pipe in there, it expands the grommet, creating a watertight seal. But some of these have a slow leak, and over time the minerals will clog that leak up. I thought I saw water coming out of one of these. Maybe I was just seeing things. Oh, I know. There's water right there because I showed you guys that one of these could bend and leak all over the place. So if that happens, if you do get a wily cat or something that's up here fussing with the buckets, trying to drop a number 2 in there, it'll take a long time for a 100-gallon barrel to drain out. And if you're like me, I come out here all the time to look at it anyways, just because it's really relaxing listening to the bubbles and the water gurgling. But if that were to happen and I wasn't here for a week and it drained out completely and it burned up the motor inside the sump tank, the fish will not be harmed. And we're just going to use goldfish instead of tilapia this time until we're ready for the much larger system that we'll talk about in a couple years, in the massive in-ground aquaponics system that we're planning on building. This is just to tickle my aquaponics bug and give you guys some more entertainment, because I know a lot of you guys enjoy this sort of thing, watching someone build something. And then, if you're a kid or you're in school or something, this is infinitely scalable up or down. You could build a small aquaponics system with a single goldfish and a tiny bucket and one little strawberry plant, or you could have a 10,000-gallon fish tank with 10,000 fish in it and a million square foot of grow beds, and you can still do all this. So it works either way, small, big. It's infinitely scalable up or down. So I hope that helps with some of the questions that you guys have. Sometimes it's hard for me to explain that, but I do my very best to explain these things and try to break them down if somebody were to ask, like Mr. Christensen did. So I'm obliged to make this video for you, sir. So thank you guys for tuning in. If you have any other questions or comments, pop those down below. Give us a thumbs up. Subscribe if you're not subscribed. And as always, keep building and try to be good to each other. Some of us aren't here for very long, and a little bit of kindness will go a long ways. So God bless you all, and peace. Oh, and I'm going to go have that beer. Thanks.